Hello, how is everyone doing tonight? What's new? Glad you're here with me. Figured I would get on and do a live tonight, even if it was very, very late. Even if it was very, very late. Trying to get this gosh darn camera in the right position. Figured I would get on tonight and talk about what just happened in Iran. So that's mainly what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm going to give some brief introductory remarks, and we're going to talk about that situation a little bit. So if you're just joining us now, welcome. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit the notifications bell so you get notified every time we do another one of these. I'm going to give some opening remarks here tonight. And then I will answer your super chat questions. So keep those super chat questions rolling in. I'll be writing them down as I'm talking on here. And then I will do the roll call, and then I'll answer your super chat questions. That's our format, right? First the opening remarks, then the roll call, then the super chat questions. So if you have a question, shoot me a super chat. I will write it down and I will give you an answer. It may not be the answer you want, but it will be an answer. But as people know, sometimes I give 15, 20-minute answers to super chats. Just depends on what the question is. So I guess, like I said, if you're just joining us now, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to hit the like button. And then we're going to roll right into it with Iran. So, folks, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I don't know why, I mean, it just irritates me. When you see mainstream media lying or obscuring facts, you know they have, like, marching orders about what they're supposed to say, right? And what they're supposed to say, what they're supposed to not to say, what they're supposed to leave unsaid. Look, the Islamic Republic of Iran has never attempted to acquire nuclear weapons. Ever. Ever. Did not happen. Iran is a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, meaning that every nuclear power site in Iran is 24 hours a day surveilled by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Every single site of nuclear power in Iran has been constantly monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Every single site. And at no point has the International Atomic Energy Agency ever found a violation by the Islamic Republic of Iran. The International Atomic Energy Agency has said that Iran is in full compliance with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Nothing that Iran has ever done has violated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So at no point has Iran ever attempted to get a nuclear bomb. If that was the case, the International Atomic Energy Agency would be right on top of them for violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. But they have fully complied. Furthermore, in 2015, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was signed, right, between Iran and the P5+1 countries. Climate collapse. Very good. Very good question. So, Iran gave up almost all of its peaceful nuclear energy program. Almost all of its peaceful nuclear energy program was signed away in Geneva at the negotiating table. Javad Zarif and John Kerry sat down in Geneva and reached an agreement in which Iran gave up almost all of its nuclear power plants, almost all of them, There's had a few left, but for the most part, almost all of its nuclear energy program, all of its peaceful nuclear energy program, it signed it away in exchange for the United States withdrawing sanctions. The Iran nuclear deal. And at no point did Iran ever break that deal. The International Atomic Energy Agency, other watchdogs said that Iran was in full compliance with the deal. At no point did Iran ever violate the deal. Unemployment, computer revolution. At no point did Iran ever violate the nuclear agreement. However, that did not stop Donald Trump from pulling the United States out of the nuclear agreement. Before the nuclear agreement was signed, 4 nuclear scientists in Iran, one of them being who was a college professor who was on his way to class, were assassinated, were shot, killed. These were people who did nothing but set up power plants, teach physics. These were nuclear physicists who, worked on nuclear power plants, taught classes at universities. One of them was walking to his class, and somebody jumped out and blew him away, shot him dead. This happened to 3 other guys as well. And that happened before the Iran nuclear negotiations. And the Obama White House leaked that those assassinations were conducted by the Mossad and in coordination with the Mujahideen Khalq. Now, who are the Mujahideen Khalq? The Mujahideen Khalq are a group of Islamo-Marxists. That's what they call themselves. They are neither Muslims nor Marxists. They claim to be Islamo-Marxists. And despite the fact that they claim to be both Muslims and Marxists, they are loved by Rudy Giuliani and Tom Ridge and Fox News and the Republican Party. And they are a group of insane fanatics who believe that it is their job to usher in some kind of apocalyptic nuclear war in order to bring down the Islamic Republic and elevate their so-called prophet, Masoud Rajavi, to run the world. They are a fanatical, insane cult, and they were actually listed as a designated terrorist organization in the 1980s and 90s when they worked with Saddam Hussein. But ever since the U.S. invasion of Iraq, ever since then, now they work for the United States against Iran. So based on that, they're A-OK, and Hillary Clinton removed them from the list of designated foreign terrorist organizations, despite the fact that not only have they killed thousands and thousands of Iranians, they've also killed Americans. They've murdered Americans as well. But does that matter to Hillary Clinton? No. Does that matter to the Republican Party and the neocons? No. So, at this point, we've got Iran never attempting to acquire a nuclear weapon, ever. We've got Iran giving up almost all of its peaceful nuclear energy program. We've got Iran having a number of its peaceful nuclear energy scientists killed. We've got Trump pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, despite the fact that Iran upheld its end of the bargain. And the icing on the cake, just the icing on the cake, is that today there was yet another assassination, an act of terrorism, in which an Iranian nuclear scientist was assassinated. All signs point to Israel being the one that carried out this assassination, but we're waiting for more information. Now, based on what I just told you, Iran is the victim of terrorism here, and that is overwhelming. It's very clear that Iran is the victim of terrorism here. Right? I mean, I'm sorry. If a country isn't permitted to build some nuclear power plants, if a country, is forced at the negotiating table just in exchange for sanctions to be lifted to give up almost all of its nuclear energy program, if a country is subject to horrendous sanctions that kill people during COVID-19, that make it impossible for Iran to buy proper airplane parts, if you add to that that Iran has already, faced just an onslaught, the United States supporting Iraq when Iraq invaded Iran, etc. Iran is a victim of terrorism at the hands of Western capitalism and imperialism and Zionism. That's pretty clear. And some of the statements that are made about Iran in American media are so horrendous and inaccurate that it is shocking to the senses. Right? You'll hear Mike Pompeo or Marco Rubio or one of the neocons, they'll just make these statements about Iran. And if anyone knows the details about any of the countries in question that they are speaking about, they know that what they are saying is utter malarkey. For example, one thing that we constantly hear is Iran is spreading terrorism throughout the region. Iran is spreading terrorism throughout the region. Oh no, Iran spreading terrorism throughout the region. Well, folks, Saudi Arabia, with the help of the United States, is spreading terrorism throughout the region. Iran is helping Iraqi Shia Muslims to defend themselves. Iran is supporting the internationally recognized Syrian government and protecting Christians from ISIS and al-Qaeda in Syria. Iran is helping the people of Bahrain. The overwhelming majority of the population of Bahrain are Shia Muslims who want democracy, but because of Saudi Arabia, a brutal monarchy that is Sunni, is forced onto the people of Bahrain. So much so that during the Arab Spring, the Saudis had to send their military to Bahrain to force the king back on the throne because the people had risen up and demanded democracy. Throughout the region, Iran is supporting people like the people of Bahrain who want democracy and not a brutal dictatorship imposed on them by the United States and Saudi Arabia, supporting the people of Syria who don't want their country overrun by al-Qaeda and al-Nusra and, Wahhabi terrorist groups, supporting Syrians who want religious freedom, etc. Supporting Iraqi Shia Muslims who don't want to get killed by, Wahhabi extremists and ISIS. Iran is not spreading terrorism throughout the region. Iran is helping the people of the region try and keep their lives stable. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is spreading an ideology called Wahhabism all throughout the region and recruiting foreign fighters to go to Syria to engage in violence and terrorism against the Syrian government. Saudi Arabia is unleashing a campaign of terrorist bombing against Yemen and slaughtering the people of Yemen for daring to demand to have their own government. Look, the notion that Iran is spreading terrorism throughout the Middle East is absolutely ridiculous. Not only has Iran been the victim of terrorism, but Iran is trying its hardest to stop the wave of terrorist violence that is spreading through the region. The terrorists who committed the 9/11 attacks, Osama bin Laden, they were Wahhabis. They were Saudi citizens. Right? The Manchester bomber who blew up the concert in Britain, do you remember that? He was a Wahhabi with a Saudi ideology who had been sent to Libya to engage in terrorism against Muammar Gaddafi. ISIS emerged as a Wahhabi organization with a Saudi ideology sent to Syria to fight against the Syrian Arab Republic. They emerged from the Western-backed Syrian rebels. I'm telling you, folks, Iran is not spreading terrorism throughout the region. Iran is not trying to acquire nuclear weapons. Some things are true, and some things are not. And almost everything we hear about Iran is not true, right? Iran has a peaceful nuclear energy program, and it got rid of it, basically. Barely any of it was left. Iran is sending its military to protect people that are being victims of terrorist groups. I'm just shocked at how much lying and deception we hear. I mean, last January, Trump murdered Qasem Soleimani, the leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran. And that was a huge, huge escalation of international tensions. And folks, if you watch what's going on now with Iran, right, Trump is getting ready to leave office. And I don't know if folks remember, but right before Trump got into office, as Obama was preparing to leave office, John Kerry and Barack Obama, both of whom had worked very hard to make the Iran nuclear deal happen, went out of their way to diss Israel, probably knowing full well that the Iran nuclear deal would be dismantled. And now, as Trump is preparing to leave office, he is going out of his way, or somebody seems to be going out of their way, to escalate tensions with Iran as Trump prepares to leave office, assuming that perhaps the Biden administration will attempt to negotiate with Iran once again. This is the facts. There are divisions within the ruling class. Right? One section of the ruling class, centered around Trump, wants to escalate tensions with Iran. Another section of the ruling class wants to negotiate with Iran. Netanyahu wants to escalate with Iran. The Democrats want to negotiate with Iran. Turkey wants to negotiate with Iran. The Muslim Brotherhood wants to negotiate with Iran. The Saudi Wahhabis, they want to escalate with Iran. The Israelis want to escalate with Iran. And it seems like there is a big division in the ruling class, very specifically around how to deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran. That seems to be the case, and that seems to be what's happening here. But we have an act of terrorism. Look, if Iran sent people to the United States to kill American scientists, we would call that terrorism. Right? If Iran sent people to Israel to kill nuclear scientists, we would call that terrorism. But the United States, I couldn't believe the New York Times headline that referred to the man who was assassinated as if he was the head of a nuclear weapons program. A nuclear weapons program that doesn't exist because Iran has no nuclear weapons program. Look, it is just shocking the amount of bias. I've been to Iran a number of times, and I'll tell you that everything that Americans think about Iran is actually true about Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, women just recently got the right to drive cars. In Iran, women are generals in the military. In Saudi Arabia, they have an absolute monarch who rules with unchecked power. In Iran, they have contested elections with different political parties, and they have women serving, a large number of women serving in the parliament. In Saudi Arabia, they execute people by beheading them in public. In Saudi Arabia, Shia Muslims are considered second-class citizens, persecuted, have no real rights. In Iran, Sunni Muslims are welcome and pray alongside Shia Muslims in mosques. Folks, everything that Americans think is true about Iran is actually true about Saudi Arabia. Iran is a country that is struggling to modernize, to build. The infrastructure improvement in the country is massive. So much money has been spent building the country up. Beautiful highways. It's amazing the level of development there. Northern Tehran, the gardens, the highways, Mashhad, Isfahan. It is an amazing country. Right? And their government, their slogan is not capitalism, but Islam. Neither East nor West. War of poverty against wealth. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 is very well alive. The largest economic entity in Iran is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is a military organization that is accountable only to the supreme leader, not even to the elected government. The state runs the oil, the state runs the healthcare, the state runs the steel industry and the car manufacturing. And there are central economic planning that goes on. And they maintain that their system is neither socialist or capitalist. They maintain it is an Islamic economy. But they are very clear that they are opposed to capitalism. They consider capitalism to be in violation of their beliefs. And they have built a society where the economy is largely controlled by a government that is rooted in communities. They have these things called Basij councils in every neighborhood that enforce the goals of the revolution on a community level. The population is mobilized around the revolutionary government and the vision of the supreme leader. Iran is very much a country that has broken free from the domination of Western capitalism. And because of that, it has been a target. If one country can be free, then other countries can be free as well. And the fact that Iran exports oil on the international markets, competing with Wall Street bankers and London Stock Exchange, the fact that Iran supports the Palestinian people, the fact that Iran supported the Irish Republican Army and the IRA, the fact that Iran supports the people of Nigeria against another oil autocracy set up by the United States. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a bastion of anti-imperialism and revolutionary struggle. And because of that, the imperialists, Wall Street and London and Tel Aviv, are determined to crush it. They are determined to crush it. And it seems like there is a desperation going on. A desperation going on, a fear that negotiations could take place, that some progress could be made. And so, as Trump is preparing to leave office, the Netanyahu wing is getting more and more vicious. That's what it appears to me. So, these are crazy, crazy times that we live in. These are very dangerous times. The killing of Qasem Soleimani last January, I was very worried that we were about to have a third world war. That was very, very terrifying. There's the killing of Qasem Soleimani. Now, this latest assassination. These are not good times. We need to make clear overwhelmingly that our enemy is not in Iran. Americans should not be afraid of Iran. We should be afraid of Wall Street. We should be afraid of London. We should be afraid of the Pentagon and the imperialists and their desperate desire to make more and more profits. Right? Iran is not our enemy. Iran is not our enemy. Our enemy is at home. Our enemy is the American ruling class. We need to be overwhelmingly clear about that. Overwhelmingly clear about that. And no, Israel is not our friend either. Now, there's a lot of good people in Israel, right? We know about the history of anti Semitism. We know why some Jewish people may feel that they need to have a country. But Israel as a country that bombed the USS Liberty and murdered American military personnel. No, that's not an anti Semitic conspiracy theory. Google it. The Israelis sunk a U.S. naval vessel on purpose. Google it. Israel, that has been pushing this country into more and more wars, that was desperate to have us invade Iraq in 2002, 2003, even though Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Folks, this notion that Israel is our friend and Israel means well by the United States, I think people need to rethink that. Israel's great for Wall Street. Israel's great for Saudi Arabia. It's a great friend for Saudi Arabia. Israel is a great friend for the big oil monopolies. It's an unsinkable battleship for the Pentagon and for U.S. imperialism in that region. But at the end of the day, Israel is not a friend of America's working families. While they're cutting food to low-income children in the United States, so much unemployment, but yet so much of our tax money, billions of dollars of our tax money, just gets handed over to the Israelis. Every day, more and more of our money gets sent to Israel. All kinds of free weapons and military equipment are given to Israel. Israel are the biggest bunch of welfare queens in the Middle East. Don't tell me that you're angry about a low-income mother with kids who gets government subsidies. Oh, she's a freeloader, she's lazy. There's a whole freeloader country in the Middle East, and it's called Israel. Israel would not exist if it were not for the United States. And it drains our resources. Right? Anyone who calls themselves a conservative, anyone who says they don't want the government to be wasting money and they're worried about government spending, Israel is a huge waste of American resources. It has gotten us into so many confrontations. It has made us enemies all over the world. Many people in the Middle East who would be very friendly, very friendly to the United States hate us because of our alliance with Israel and our backing up of Israel. So, we need to rethink whether Israel is really our friend. And we definitely need to stop thinking that Iran is our enemy. That's my opinion about this whole situation. So when I saw what happened, this latest killing of a peaceful scientist, an act of terrorism, I found it deeply disappointing. Because I've been to Iran, and I'll tell you one thing. While the people of Iran do hate American imperialism, while yes, they do chant death to America, they don't hate Americans. As an American who's been all over Iran, Iranians love Americans. There's a lot of Iranians who love American movies. They love American television. They think the United States is great. I went to Iran as an American. I prayed in church, in an Armenian Christian church on Sunday morning. Nobody spit on me. Met with Iranian Christians who practice their faith openly. Met with Iranian Jews who practice their faith openly. Iranians don't hate Americans. When they chant death to America, they're referring to the system that has become synonymous with America. Right? You know it and I know it. There has been a huge effort to make America synonymous with capitalism. right? Capitalism, they tell us, is the American way. Imperialism, and the rule of the world by a few monopoly corporations who back up their power with cruise missiles and the threat of destruction and war. They tell us that that is the American way. Well, as someone who's been to Iran, I will tell you that I feel that it is the responsibility of those of us here in America who can see through all these lies to make it abundantly clear that this is not the American way, that there is another America. There's the America of John Brown and Gus Hall and Huey Newton and William Z. Foster. There's the America that when the Vietnam War was going, they didn't wave the flag and blindly support the war, but there was a section of the American population that walked through the streets of this country waving the flag of the National Liberation Front of Vietnam and chanting, "Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh, the NLF is going to win. One side's right, one side's wrong, victory to the Viet Cong." Right? At the same time, slavery was going on in the United States. There was Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman. At the same time, Native people were being slaughtered. There were great revolutionaries like Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. At the same time that children were being worked in factories, there were great labor organizers like Eugene Debs and William Z. Foster. And that there is a whole other side to American history. There is the progressive side of American history. There is the workers and the farmers of America, the working people of this country. And more, as our economy collapses, but our government's more concerned about protecting the Israelis than about making sure Americans can eat, that America is starting to wake up. It's waking up, and it is rising like a mighty storm. We are sick and tired of being lied to. We're sick and tired of being sold down the river and manipulated. The real America of working people, black, white, Latino, Asian, Arab, the real America, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, the real America is going to rise up. And the real America, when it awakens, will realize that Iran is not its enemy, that Wall Street and London and Tel Aviv, that's the real enemy of the real America. And when the real America awakens, it's going to shake this country and the world like a mighty, mighty storm. So on that note, I guess we will do our roll call. So that concludes my opening remarks. So names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Washington State, Australia. Rafael, Brazil. Hello, just got here. Arthur Porter. Vallejo, California. Cleveland Pirate Alex. Joey from Belize. Sam Levin in Los Angeles. Toronto, Canada. Kieran from San Diego. Don from Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Chicago. The Bronx, Vancouver, Canada, New York, Vancouver, Canada, Maryside, Pennsylvania, USA, Oakland, California, Zurich, Switzerland, Salem, Boston, Massachusetts, Hawthorne, New Jersey, Phoenix, Arizona, Maryland, Mississippi, amazing opening, JT24, Pacific Northwest, I hope you're right, Robert from Hawaii, Kenny in Duluth, Georgia, Berlin, Deutschland, UK, London, somewhere USA, Albany, New York, Comrade Giles in Cincinnati, Yucca Valley, California, Langley, Virginia, Iran, Iran, Brazil, Oakland, Tennessee, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, South Austin, Texas Gang, Portland, Bendigo, Australia, Lake Park, Florida, Rusty in Culver City, Anna in Des Moines, Iowa, Union, New Jersey, Google is not a verb, Solidarity from Michigan, somewhere USA, Albany, New York, Norway, David in Italy, all my Appalachian comrades, Toronto, Shaniqua from Buffalo, hi Caleb, hello Shaniqua, Hanging in the Hood in Houston, Niagara Falls, New York, Mohsin from Iran, house sitting for Bernie Sanders, Durden based, Kendall in San Diego, Sicily, dam buffering. Where is dam buffering? Right? Right? Must be the dam on the buffering river. Long Island, New York, North Las Vegas, Philippines. America is the great devil, Imam Khomeini. They do not mean the American people. They mean the American politicians and government. Occupied Ireland. Na. Where is Na? Bonn, Germany. La California. Very good. Land of Love. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that sweet? Connecticut. Commonwealth. Indeed. Indeed. South Korea. Jacob, Norwalk, Canada. Diet beverage land. Not now. It's late. It's late. I don't want a diet beverage. I'll never get to sleep. America should become of empathy. Very, very sweet. Very, very sweet. Sweet folks. I can't be up too late tonight. We've gone for 36 minutes already. That's okay. Glad to talk to you all. But as long as you keep these super chats coming, I will keep answering your questions. So the first question I had, Austin, Texas, George Kraft, many fans in Canada. Consider, oh, of course, Robot Persona. Yeah, I'm coming to Canada as soon as I can. Look, when this pandemic is over, there's like a list of places that keeps growing that I have to get to. The first of them is California. First is California, then Australia, then UK. Canada's on the list. No, trust me, there are so many places I need to get to. I'm getting on here all the time, engaging with all of you, and oh, wow. Yeah, California is the first on the list, but it's the first of many. I am going to make an international tour as soon as I am able to, because this, Auckland, New Zealand. Auckland, New Zealand. Thank you, Robot Persona, for the super chat. Go to the global south country like Bolivia. Very good. Very good. Free stay Caleb. Very good. All righty. So the first super chat question I received was climate change. What do we do about it? Well, the answer to climate change is historical progress. It is not reducing the human population. It is not making everyone poor. It is not stopping the development of the third world. The answer to climate change is getting us off of the profit system of production. No longer having profits in command of the economy. See the means production peacefully. Was no longer having profits in command of the economy. The main way to stop the climate catastrophe is to get rid of fossil fuels, to get beyond fossil fuels. To get beyond fossil fuels, to get to a higher form of energy, not reducing living standards, not windmills and solar panels. I like windmills, like solar panels, but in order to solve the climate problem, we need a form of energy that doesn't involve carbon emissions, but is higher, that gives us more energy. We need nuclear power. We need a lot more nuclear power, first of all, but we need nuclear fusion. Look, that's why China is sending yet another mission to the far side of the moon to get even more helium-3. China is working like crazy to get humanity out of the trap, out of the prison called fossil fuels. And until we do that, there's no hope. Look, there are so many people that have this illusion. On the right, on the left, they have this illusion that, okay, well, in order to stop climate change, we just got to stop this thirst for growth. We got to stop growing. We got to stop humanity from expanding. We got to stop, having so much stuff. We have to reduce living standards, reduce consumption. That will never happen because of the nature of humanity. Mankind, humanity is a species that wants to grow. It wants to expand. It wants to build. You will never stop human technological historical progress. The human population is going to keep growing. The human population is going to keep expanding. Human beings are going to keep inventing things. They're going to want to live better and longer than they lived before. They are going to want to build better things. They're going to want their kids to have a better life than they had. So you will never stop historical progress. And the people who want to stop historical progress, the Malthusian death cults, they are very, very dangerous. And that's why, it's their ideology that I think is driving depression and the suicide rate among young people. You will never stop the march of historical progress. Time does not stop. Human beings do not stop, right? Human beings are progressive species. We've been inventing things, building things, getting to higher stages, higher modes of production throughout our history. And humanity will not stop. Humanity will not stop. However, profits must stop. The capitalist mode of production must stop, and we must have a rational, centrally planned economy that interacts with our environment in a long-term, strategic way, not whatever is in the interest of a short-term capitalist. The reason we're having a climate catastrophe is because profits are in command, and fossil fuels are the global mode of production. Oil, we have an oil-based global order, and Wall Street wants that because they control the oil markets, right? Except for a few outliers like Iran, animal farm, okay, like Iran, like Venezuela, like Russia. Aside from them, almost all the oil is controlled by the Wall Street imperialists. And until we get off of the trap of oil, of the oil-based international order, until we get off that trap, there's really no hope. We must get off of oil and fossil fuels. We need a higher energy source. That's the only way to solve the climate crisis, right? Anything else, we're going to reduce living standards. We're going to have everyone buy less stuff. No, not going to work. We're going to make people in the third world stop expanding their population. We're going to stop development. No, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Humanity is a species that advances and builds and constructs. So the only way is to get profits out of command and get that building and constructing done in a rational, centrally planned way. That's the only way. How would unemployment caused by the computer revolution be dealt with by a socialist government? Easy. Very easy point, right? Not easy to get there, but it's an easy point to understand, right? Under capitalism, technology causes more poverty. The more efficient production becomes, the fewer people work. But under socialism, when you have a planned economy, machines doing more work means less work for everyone to do. All right. Trotsky caught with $1 million. All righty. Right? Under capitalism, unemployment is the result of technology. Under capitalism, we have frequent gluts of overproduction, underconsumption, because human beings only work so long as their work enriches capital, and they only can live so long as they work. And as a result of that, the more technology advances, the greater poverty you have, and that is a problem. That's a big problem. Under socialism, it is the state that plans production. Production is carried out upon a predetermined plan. So instead of production being carried out by what's most profitable for a capitalist, all the people that might be unemployed because of technology are put to work doing things that are useful. Production and economic activity does not happen because a capitalist makes profit from it. It happens because society as a group decides it is necessary. Right? Right now, all across the United States, there's all kinds of work that needs to be done that no one is being hired to do. Why is no one being hired to fix all the crumbling bridges throughout the United States? We have bridges across the United States that are not secure. Why is nobody hiring people to go and fix those gosh darn bridges? Why do I have to hold my breath every time I drive over a bridge, worrying that this might be the time when it falls? Because no capitalist can make a profit from fixing those gosh darn bridges. And as a result, they're a disaster waiting to happen. Well, if the economy were not based on profits, if the state controlled the means of production, we could say, unemployed people, you are now hired to go fix those bridges, right? But instead, we have a free market economy. We have a government that is constantly in debt to banks, and we have crumbling infrastructure. We have water that isn't properly purified. We have roads that are falling apart. This is a disaster. The infrastructure of the United States is a disaster. It's an argument against free market economics. Why is all the work that needs to be done in the United States to fix the country up not happening? Simple. No capitalist is making profit from it. That's why. Well, under socialism, we could figure that out, right? Socialism resolves this contradiction, and technology becomes a good thing because it takes the burden of work off of society. Alrighty. How do we seize the means of production peacefully? Well, actually, means of production get seized peacefully all the time under this system. Just doesn't happen in mass, but every so often, yes, the government will use something called eminent domain to take private property, usually in the form of land, right? It's in the Constitution that the government has the right to seize property on the basis of public good. Well, so you wouldn't even need to change the Constitution in order to seize the means of production peacefully. Congress could seize the means of production by law, right? Under eminent domain, the government of the United States has the right to seize private property. Now, they have to give compensation, but, it is completely legal, right? You could seize the means of production for the state in the United States at this time, fully legally, right? It could happen, eminent domain, right? Now, someone's asking, how would you seize the means of production peacefully? Well, obviously there would be a big political battle, and perhaps that political battle might break into something bigger, but there are mechanisms for the peaceful seizing of the means of production when the state is in the hands of a popular mobilization of the people. The state is no longer held by capital. If you have a government of action that fights for working families, that government could start nationalizing things. I don't see the contradiction. Alrighty. Animal Farm. That is a book written by George Orwell. Animal Farm by George Orwell. And this is a book, funny story about George Orwell. About Animal Farm. I'm getting tired here. But, it was required reading at my school, like it is at almost every school in the United States. It's one of those books you have to read. And I remember we read it. We were supposed to read it over summer break. We had 3 books we could read: Brave New World, Animal Farm, or this other one. And so that was our summer reading assignment. So, first week of school, we're having classes to discuss each of the books that we read. One of them was Animal Farm. All right? And we're discussing this as a class, and I raised my hand, and I said, well, it's about communism. And I swear, 4 people in the class rolled their eyes and said, you think everything is about communism, Caleb? I'm like, it's Animal Farm. It's clearly about communism. They're like, no, it's about farm. It's about animals. People did not believe me that Animal Farm was about communism. It's so obviously about communism, but apparently, everything's about communism with you, Caleb. And it's like, no, this book is very clear. Google it. This book is about communism. So that just shows the intellectual level. There was one girl in my class, I'll never forget this, who thought that Animal Farm was about the American Revolution. And she said, well, it's this group of barnyard animals that win their freedom from the farmer, but then the pigs, who originally led the revolution, become the new rulers. They're the new ruling class, and they start walking on 2 feet. And this girl thought it was about the American Revolution. She's like, well, we won our freedom from the British, but now we have this big government that's oppressing us. It's about the American Revolution. People were just completely clueless. That was the sad thing, right? It was like, is the Cold War better when everyone's like hating communism all day long, or is it better when people think that are so like ignorant of what it's about? I don't know which one's better. I don't know. You take your pick. But it's an analogy for the Russian Revolution, right? The animals overthrow and kill the farmer and take control of the farm. Um, and the pigs are the ones that mobilized the revolution. And, the pigs gradually betray the ideals of the revolution. And pretty soon they turn into the new people and start walking on 2 feet. And that, not a good book, in my opinion. The worst part of it, I think, is Boxer the horse, right? Because Boxer the horse named Boxer, is supposed to represent dealing with capitalist criminals. Boxer the horse is supposed to represent the Russian working class, and he's portrayed as stupid, as a stupid true believer. The pig who's supposed to represent Stalin is called Snowball, and Boxer the horse, comes up with the slogan "Snowball is always right." He works really, really hard. When he can't work anymore, they turn him into glue and use the glue. The pigs use the glue to buy whiskey, and they drink their whiskey, and it's supposed to show that the ruling class or the Soviet leaders, they just they worked the Russian people to death and killed them when they got old or something like that, and it's completely contrary to what actually happened. It's completely contrary to what actually happened. In the Soviet Union, they had a lower retirement age than most capitalist countries did. The way elderly folks were treated in the Soviet Union was actually pretty good, compared to the way elderly folks were treated in the United States and Western countries. Elderly folks in the Soviet Union, were treated pretty well. Pensions, vacations, they were taken care of. But that, of course, is covered up. And the worst thing about Animal Farm is that nobody knows anything about Soviet history in the United States. They know Stalin killed a bunch of people. They know the Soviet Union was really, really bad. But most of what Americans know about the Soviet Union is not based on any actual history book, legitimate or propagandistic. Most of what Americans think they know about Soviet history is based on a stupid book about barnyard animals written by an anarchist police informant. I mean, George Orwell was the original synthetic left, if there ever was anything. He was the original synthetic left. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of Animal Farm. It's pessimistic, it's dark, it's kind of brutal, mean satire, and it views the Russian working class as inferior animals, basically, right? The idea is that most human beings are inferior rabble, and when they try to build something socialist, it just makes things worse. It just makes things the same as they were, because human beings deep down are evil, right? And that's the message of 1984, right? And the future is dark, and revolution and modernity are only making things worse. The rights of the individual artist are fading away. It's petty bourgeois fatalism at its worst. Not a big fan. Not a big fan. Alrighty. Was Trotsky caught with $1 million? I don't know. I don't know. See, this is the thing, right? So I think this is the person from the last live who's pushing the conspiracy theory that Trotsky, living in New York City with Russian exiles and writing a newspaper, proves that the Russian Revolution was all a big Wall Street conspiracy. Was Trotsky caught with $1 million at the border? I don't know if that's true or not, but how much does a revolution cost? How much does a revolution cost? So just $1 million? That's all it takes to have a revolution? Because I can guarantee you that if all the communists in the United States were to pool if that's all it costs to have a revolution in the largest country in the world in terms of geography, that's all it cost to create the Soviet Union, was $1 million. Seriously, folks, we should just stop, doing anything we do, and we should just get together and raise our money. For years, mind you, right before this anti-Semitic stuff got going, and the idea was that it was, secretly the Russian Revolution was all conspired by Zionists or something like that. Before people pushed that idea, it was the Germans, right? Lenin received some financial support from the Germans. That's true, right? The German government gave Lenin financial support. How much did they give him? We don't know, right? They transported Lenin to Russia. Um, um, okay, neocons, actually Trotskyites? Question mark. All right, we'll talk about neocon Trotskyism. The way that person framed it is not correct. But for years they said, oh, it's true. The German government gave Lenin money. They gave him a sealed train to take him to, to Russia on a sealed train. So was the Russian Revolution a German conspiracy? No, I mean the Russian Revolution was a Bolshevik conspiracy. You know, Trotsky probably raised a lot of money among Russian exiles living in New York City and elsewhere. He probably raised a lot of money from socialists. Who knows? I don't even know if what you're saying there is even true. But if that's true, is that all that a revolution costs? Is $1 million? Right? And how do you know it wasn't the German conspiracy? How do you know it wasn't a German conspiracy, right? They might have given Lenin $1 million when they put him on the sealed train and sent him back, right? The idea that somebody got support from somebody. So that proves that whole historical events are simply the results of somebody cutting somebody a check. Doesn't work. Doesn't work, right? Did Trotsky take money with him when he left New York City to go to the USSR or to go to Russia in the spring of 1917? Maybe. And Trotsky, he had a lot of international supporters. He was well known all throughout the cafes of Europe. He had a big network of people. Did he take money with him? Maybe. Did Lenin take money with him when he came to the Finland station? Yep. And who gave him that money? The Germans. Why? Because Lenin wanted to end World War One. Lenin wanted to end World War One, and Russia was fighting Germany, and so the Germans gave Lenin lots of money. So how do you know it wasn't a German conspiracy? Right? I mean, was it a German conspiracy? Or maybe the Germans were also conspiring with Wall Street. Maybe it was a big German Wall Street conspiracy. I mean, this is getting silly, right? Somebody writing a check to somebody giving someone a ride on a train, right? All kinds of people are covertly supported by all kinds of people for all kinds of crazy reasons. Look, there's a certain communist party in a certain part of the world that is being promoted well, never mind. That's being promoted on Voice of America right now. Does that prove that they've always, been agents? No, right? The U.S. government funded Pol Pot, right? Let's not forget that, right? Gaddafi gave money to some far right-wing groups, even though he was an anti-imperialist, an anti-racist, a proponent of black people, wrote a book saying black people would rule the world. He gave money to some racist groups, right? All kinds of people are covertly supported by all kinds of people for all kinds of crazy reasons, okay? So you're saying that Trotsky was caught with some money? Well, that proves nothing. All righty. All right. Dealing with capitalist criminals. Well, look, here's the thing. This may not be what you're expecting me to say, right? There's probably a lot of people expecting me to say, you know what, I want the harshest punishment for anybody. I want people to be tortured. And that's actually not my perspective. I think that punishment, cruelty, sadism is never a good thing. Vengeance is never a good thing, right? Obviously, it is necessary to have a criminal justice system in order to deter crime, in order to have a stable society. My belief is that will eventually fade away as we move toward communism, the ultimate goal of a stateless, classless world of material abundance. But until we get to communism, as long as, class society exists, as long as property exists, as long as, the need for a state exists, right, until that ultimate goal of a stateless, classless world of vast material abundance is achieved, There's going to need to be a state. And when there's a state, there's going to have to be prisons. There's going to have to be punishments, courts, laws, etc. But they're not a good thing, and you shouldn't relish them, right? You shouldn't want to make someone else suffer, right? Whenever you sit there and want someone else to suffer, if you're like fixating on I want someone to suffer, that's not healthy. Those are not healthy emotions, right? Right? No one should take lethal pleasure in someone else's suffering. You're asking me how would we deal with capitalist criminals? My hope is that we would deal with them in the way that was to the most benefit. Is ICE racist? The way Trump claims 1 million votes were created from thin air, Biden can't enter the White House. He proves 80 million, civil war soon. Um, my hope is that we would deal with capitalist criminals and people who've committed crimes in the way that is to the most benefit to society, in the way that is the most necessary. I personally would prefer that we didn't have the death penalty. Right? I don't believe the death penalty is a good thing. I don't believe torture is a good thing. Honestly, prisons are not a very good thing. I mean, they are necessary at this time. Slogans like abolish prisons. Well, where are you going to put the child molesters and rapists and axe murderers? I mean, you got to have a place to put them. So obviously, you're going to need prisons. But, I'm not a fan of people harming other people. Not a big fan of it. It goes on and it is necessary to some degree or other, but I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not. So I'm just telling you how I feel. All right. Um, the neocons were actually Trotskyites. Well, that's not true. They were Trotskyites and they became neocons, right? The neocons were not actually Trotskyites. They started out as Trotskyites and became neocons, right? And they weren't just any Trotskyites, right? First you had the communists, Communist International. 1928 you had the Trotskyites kicked out of the Communist International. So 1933, 34, you have Trotsky starting the Fourth International, his own Trotskyite International. 1939, right? The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is signed. The Stalin-Hitler Pact, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the non-aggression pact between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany is signed. On the basis of that, a number of Trotskyites, a very big percentage of Trotskyites, denounced the USSR 100% and said it was no longer a deformed workers' state, said the USSR was capitalist. Trotsky disagreed with them. Trotsky insisted the Soviet Union, he said it was a deformed workers' state, a degenerate workers' state, that it was still socialist in its economic foundations, but it had a parasitic bureaucracy that was not revolutionary at the top of it. The Trotskyites come out of the group of Trotskyites who disagreed with Trotsky and denounced the Soviet Union, said the Soviet Union was not a socialist country in 1939. Max Shachtman was their leader. Max Shachtman cut ties with Leon Trotsky in 1939. Max Shachtman's followers, after World War II, started working for the CIA. Among them was Irving Kristol. And Irving Kristol was a follower of Max Shachtman. Irving Howe, he never became a neocon, but he started DSA. And, it was a group of Trotskyites who broke with Trotsky. And over the course of the 1940s and 50s, a lot of them denounced Marxism entirely and moved toward becoming neoconservatives. James Burnham, and some of them never had been Trotskyites, right? I mean, Leo Strauss, the professor, he had been a professor in Nazi Germany. He obviously fled because he was Jewish. He taught philosophy. He was never a Trotskyite. He was never a leftist. He was a philosophy professor in Germany, right? Not all of the neocons were Trotskyites. Some of them were, but neoconservatism and Trotskyism are very, very different ideologies, right? Irving Kristol, he was the father of neoconservatism, and he had been a Trotskyist, but he stopped being one. So, it's like there is a pipeline, right? That there's a certain strata of people in New York City who, their parents came to New York City with nothing. with nothing but the shirt off their back and were starving and hungry. So they got involved in socialist politics and building labor unions and trying to feed people, right? And they were in the IWW and they were in the Socialist Party. A lot of them didn't speak English. They spoke, Lithuanian or Yiddish or Russian or whatever, right? There was a lot of immigrants from Eastern Europe, from Italy, from Ireland, right, who came to the United States and were starving and poor, right? Well, they were the socialist movement in the United States. The Socialist Party and eventually the Communist Party they were key in setting up the Communist Party. But then, right, a lot of their kids, other platforms, a lot of their kids went to college and university, maybe became college professors, and while their parents had been starving, unemployed working class people, they went to college and, they had independence and, based on their kind of middle class feeling, they didn't want to be held to the discipline of the Communist Party. So they became Trotskyites because that was seen as a more intellectual kind of thing, and they weren't aligned with the Soviet Union. They were more radical and they were more intellectual, and they were they talk about the New York intellectuals, Sidney Hook, for example, right? So they were Trotskyites. Well, World War II happens. Their kids became conservatives, right? Bill Kristol is the son of Irving Kristol, right? And that this is, first they cut ties with they cut ties with the Soviet Union. Then they kind of aligned with the United States, and I think Israel has a lot to do with it, right? I mean, the fact a lot of these folks were big supporters of Israel, and at first Israel was presented as kind of a socialist country, but as Israel got more conservative, and it was leftists that were attacking Israel, they got more and more conservative, right? Over the course of the 60s and 70s, you have a lot of these people that started out like in the 40s and 30s, they were Trotskyites. In the 50s, they were kind of social democrats. In the 60s, they didn't like the New Left. They didn't like the anti-war protesters. They didn't like the hippies. And they were very, very anti-communist, so they were not comfortable with Students for a Democratic Society. And, and in the 70s and 80s, they're neoconservatives. Their views changed, though. They had different views. There are some similar themes. They are intellectuals, for example. They're obsessed with the freedom of intellectuals, right? It's freedom versus those who hate freedom. Totalitarianism versus freedom, that theme is there. This kind of middle class obsession with individualism is there, right? Anti-communism. Trotskyites are anti-communist. They hate the existing socialist countries, right? Well, these guys are anti-communist. But there are some big changes, right? I mean, the neocons believe in free market capitalism, right? Trotskyites think they're socialists. The neocons are big supporters of Western capitalism and imperialism. Trotskyites try to pretend they're not. Irving Howe, who was a Trotskyite who never became a neocon, he became a social democrat and was a founder of DSA. He went as far as saying that as a Trotskyite, when he was a Trotskyite, that he was like, that Trotskyism was a division of Western democracy or something. Like he really took social democracy into the U.S. side of the Cold War pretty blatantly. David Horowitz was not in Students for a Democratic Society. David Horowitz was the editor of Ramparts magazine. Right? David Horowitz was the editor of Ramparts magazine, which was the radical magazine in the Bay Area. I talk about that in my book on Kamala Harris. He was the main editor of the main radical magazine in the Bay Area. That's David Horowitz. But yeah, the neocons were not actually Trotskyites. They started out as Trotskyites and became neocons. It was a pipeline, but they were not. It's not. Some people say, no. There's a continuum, right? It's anti-communism becoming more and more anti-communist, but that's not the way they put it. There is not correct. Is ICE racist? Well, look, my position has always been that the best friend that MS-13 ever had was ICE, right? That by making immigrant communities afraid to call the police, they are creating an atmosphere in which the right wing, in which the vigilante, not vigilante, in which the human trafficking, drug gangs can really grow. And that's the thing, right? I mean, the way ICE conducts itself, it terrifies entire communities, become afraid to call the police. children come home from school and their parents aren't there. This isn't right, right? I mean, the way ICE operates is not right. ICE tends to be staffed also by people that have an ideological conviction to anti-immigrant stuff, and that's not good. Now, I can't confirm a lot of these rumors about ICE, right? I mean, we've heard the rumor about women, in ICE facilities, who are being sterilized. We've heard the rumors about there's a lot of rumors about ICE that cannot be confirmed, and I don't know if they're true or not. I mean, they're pretty believable. They're pretty believable that ICE is staffed full of racist, anti-immigrant, bigot people that would, that really, take pleasure in harming other people. Is that true? I mean, it certainly sounds like it could be. I don't deny it. But, I don't know. I don't have proof either, right? These are rumors that have circulated in the press. But my position is that the raids on immigrant communities must stop. That is my position. That the problem is capitalism, and that, obviously mass migration is not a good thing. People shouldn't be afraid to leave their homes, right? And we shouldn't be celebrating mass migration. We should recognize mass migration is bad for everybody, right? It's bad for the people that can't live in their countries because their countries are being demolished by neoliberalism. It's bad for the people in communities where there's people that are undocumented and are being exploited financially. The situation where you have millions of people who can't live in their home country and flee to wealthier countries is bad for everybody, right? And the way to stop it, though, is not scapegoating immigrants. It's not treating immigrants like criminals. It's not, deporting people and breaking apart families. The way to deal with mass migration is to develop. We need economic development. We need the third world to rise out of poverty. We need, countries throughout, the Latin America and all that to be developed. We need to end these terrorist wars that destroy countries and create refugees, right? Capitalism, global capitalism, is creating a crisis of mass migration, and it must end. And part of my critique of the liberals is the liberals, they don't say, oh, we must end global capitalism. We must end global capitalism because it's creating mass migration. They say, oh, mass migration's great. Yay, it's the American dream. No, it's not great. It's not great that the dead bodies are found along the border every day. That's not good, right? Look at these caravans. Look at the conditions these people are in. This is not good. This is a bad situation. And then people say, I have been called by people by saying that I'm an anti-immigrant bigot. No, I'm not. I am not an anti-immigrant bigot. I'm somebody who's saying that the conditions that immigrants are facing, the conditions people in this country are facing, the conditions people all over the world are facing is bad. The whole situation is very, very bad. And the idiotic, oh, I don't like them immigrants, they're a different color than me, I won't go back where they came from. That is not the solution. That ignorant bigotry is not the solution, right? But just doing what the liberals do and saying, yay, wow, mass migration's amazing, that's not the solution either. That's been my position, and that makes me alt-left. That makes me scary, right? Because if you're a good liberal, you just do what Democrats do. And Democrats say, oh, immigrants do the job that we won't do. Immigrants are great. No, immigrants are great. There are great people who are immigrants. It's a nation of immigrants. But the situation where millions of people have to flee their homes is not a good situation, and we just need to say that. Right? It's a bad situation all around for all kinds of people. And we need to get to a situation where if people want to change countries, they can do it, but there's no economic compulsion. All right. All righty. Trump says civil war. No. Trump said that when the Electoral College certifies that Joe Biden won, he will concede the election. Trump has said that already. So, if I can't think of any reason the Electoral College would not certify Trump as the winner. But if the Electoral College were to not certify Trump as the winner, obviously we'd have a little bit of a problem. But when the Electoral College certifies Joe Biden as the winner, Trump says he will concede. So that's the end of that. All right. Would I stream on other platforms? Well, I hope I don't have to, because I've already established myself on this platform. Another platform I'd have to start right at the beginning. Who knows? I could see myself on other platforms at some point. Sorry, was there another super chat about the Catholic Church or something? What was that? Did I miss a super chat? What was it? Was there another super chat that I missed? I want to get every super chat. I want to make sure I get everything. Was there another super chat that I missed? Anybody? Was there another super chat? Did I miss one? I saw someone saying, "Oh, he missed my super chat about the Catholic Church." Did I miss one? Did I miss one? Any other super chat questions people got before I go? Anything else on people's minds? There was a super chat about you being a great guy. Aw, well, thank you. That's very nice. Yeah, I think he might be gone, someone said. So there you go. Okay, well, great. If there's any other super chat questions, now is the time to ask them. Ask now or ask me the next time I'm live. You know, the clock is ticking. If you have another super chat question, because it's late, you can see me squinting because I'm tired. I feel like a cowboy in a movie. I'm squinting. You know, I'm like Mike Pence. I'm squinting. Yeah, I'm a cowboy. No, I don't like squinting. I like to have my whole eyes open. I'm just a little tired. Where's the Kraken? Isn't that like a monster from ancient myths or something? Alrighty. Well, it looks like we're wrapping it up. All right, folks. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, the people of all countries must get prepared. Revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. Thanks. Good night. Oh, no question. Just found your channel thanks to Anthony Reyes. You're so great. Awesome job tonight. Well, thank you, Mona. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. Thank you for slipping that in right there at the end. Thank you, Mona. Very much appreciated. Have a good night, Mona. Glad you're on board. I'll be live once again. I'm sure I'll be live over the weekend. So, you know, and don't forget that we need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Good night.